and because I know there's a lot of confusion, especially in our scene. Could you explain Urbit for a second? What do you like about Urbit? Why do you spend most of your time there? And would you recommend other people get into it, or are you kind of do you like it being the sort of niche thing?
Right. So Orbit is a personal server OS. It's an operating system which works as a personal server. You would need to know a bit of how the internet works, but to make it easy, when you send a message to anyone on WhatsApp or Telegram, what happens is your message goes to to Facebook's servers, right, or Apple's or whoever's. Then they relay those messages to who you're talking to, right? And that's insane, right? If I want to talk to my mother, I want to talk to my wife, I shouldn't have to send my messages to Facebook, right? It's really a matter of principle. What Orbit does is facilitate peer-to-peer communication because every single Orbit user has its own server. You can send messages directly to people. You can build a bunch of applications there. Most people use chat, but there's a bunch of other things. It's still early days. The user experience is not as good as it could be. But again, I think it's a matter of principle. Why should I send my messages to other people when I just want to talk to my friends?
That's a great point. I've been trying to get on Urbit myself recently, and I haven't developed the mind for it yet. But I've been trying to encourage people to, even with Telegram. I like Telegram quite a bit, but I don't really trust Telegram. It seems like
Exactly,
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop when it comes to Telegram. It's very mysterious why it exists because it doesn't seem
exactly.
to be very revenue positive either.
Right. Where does he make the money, and why is he offering this free, cool messaging app? Right. What's in it for him? I don't get it.
Yeah, maybe he might be the altruistic philosopher king we've all been waiting for, but I'm more cynical than that. Now, as with, we'll get into the topics now. Now, when we had Colossal Dawn, we discussed some of the ideas, but I'm hoping to go straight to the source with you and discuss some of them in a bit more detail. But I think it's probably important we define our terms. So, some people will recognize a lot of the things we're going to talk about from various chats they've permeated into the scene. The three that I found the most fascinating were IQ Shredder, BioLeninism, and I think at the base of that is the social calculus model. Now, I'm sure you're probably sick and tired of talking about all this forever, but I was wondering if we could spend a bit of time discussing, maybe before we get into, maybe start with BioLeninism, because I think that grounds some of it. Did you? I could describe it for a bit, but I wonder if you had a brief way of outlining it for people who've never heard of it before.
Right. So the short story would be that there's two types of political systems, right? There's those with closed access and those which are open access. If you're some medieval monarchy in the year 1000, the king is the king and he has his buddies, and you don't get to engage in politics if you're not family or good friends with the king. It just doesn't happen. It's a closed access system, so everything that happens goes around the king. And in an open access system, though, that we have, anybody can get into politics if we follow the rules. And the way the rules work in our systems, which are liberal democracies, is that you make a political party. Right? You join a political party, and they help you get elected, and then once you're elected, you do what the party usually what the party tells you to do. So, what kind of person goes into a political party, and what kind of employee? So, members of political parties are employees in a way, right? So, what kind of people join political parties, and what do political parties want of their staff? And if you think about it, it's not a good job, right? Anybody can. It's not a good way to make money. If you want a job, joining a political party is just not. It's not very lucrative. I mean, it can be if you're corrupt. But
It seems to be popular with particularly ambitious bureaucrats.
is it though? Because bureaucrats make good money. There's very high-ranking, smart people in the Department of Finance or whatever, and I know some of those. And they can be very smart and competent people, and they have a good life, and they don't have to get all the flack that a politician gets. Right? It's a much easier job to be a bureaucrat. It's 9 to 5 and pretty easy, I'm told. A politician that have to do elections and campaigns, and then all the back room gossip and backstab and all that stuff. It's it's a tricky job. It's not a job for just a smart person who wants to just raise a family.
Yeah, and I also think that ties into another idea that I just mentioned, which I think I pronounced it wrong. Is the social calculus module, and my summary of that, at least what I got from it, was it's something that a lot of people will implicitly understand, where people have a calculation going in their minds all the time of their social status, where they are within the larger hierarchy. And this calculation is different, of course, for every country. And that having lived in China, I'm sure that you hear stories about how people calculate their status based on different inputs than what we would in the West. But we are always keenly aware of that. And I think it's important to remember for people, even these bureaucrats, even like the people who get into political parties. I think what you're also implying is that exact same model is running, and they're very, very interested in their own status. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Yes. We all are, right? I mean, the way I see this, it's the primary function of all social behavior. Not in all social animals, really. Humans more so because we're more social. But all social animals, the the key to your survival and reproduction is the status inside the group. So that's the one thing you should care about.
Yeah, and in your there's a series you had done on your blog titled Bloody Shovel on the spandrel.com. You can find Bloody Shovel 3, the third iteration. You have this little segment here that I think puts it into context for people, because a lot of what you also talk about is the Soviet Union as a great example of this in action. And there's just a little part here I'm going to read for people. And it's what did Lenin do? Exterminate the natural aristocracy of Russia and build a ruling class with a bunch of low status people, workers, peasants, Jews, Latvians, Ukrainians. Lenin went out of his way to recruit everyone who held a grudge against imperial Russian society. The early Soviet Union promoted minorities, women, sexual deviants, atheists, cultists and every kind of weirdo. Everybody but intelligent, conservative Russians of good families. And so you had a line here that I thought was so good, which was that Leninism, as such, was a way to hack this social calculus model. It was a way to take all the people who had no status and rally them around the advocacy of getting them status. And it wasn't really any highfalutin philosophical thing. It was just you found the human capital that was ravenous enough to try and claw status to themselves on a strictly almost personal level. Would that be correct?
Yes, yes, and if I mean, I'm not Russian myself, and I wasn't there. But if you read any history on the Russian Revolution, it really strikes you, what weird and disagreeable and just nasty people were at the forefront of all that.
Yeah. And an interesting thing, and so bio-Leninism, and again, people check out the series of 3 articles titled Bio-Leninism on spandrel.com. But when I read it all those years ago, I saw it sort of developing alongside, I'm sure you're aware of him, Edward Dutton. He's done a lot of work recently on his central thesis of spiteful mutants. And
Right.
he's taking it from strictly a evolutionary biological standpoint, which is saying that there's these people that are just biologically inferior. They're gross. They're freaks. They're genetic dead ends, and and I see bio-Leninism as the systems model of what these people do, and you can join both of these theories. They go hand in hand. So bio-Leninism is sort of the technique and strategy they use, but on a biological level, you just have this mass of people that are just low IQ, maybe mentally ill, maybe and the more they succeed in the system, the more the system fails. And that I think you had stated in your blog that liberalism as a system has no way to sort out those people. Would that be correct?
Yeah, exactly. And in an older day, people who are just of an healthy disposition, they would just die off because people were poor and there was not enough food to go around. But now we are all very rich and there's food for everyone. So we have a lot of very unfit people around, which again wouldn't have never existed or very seldom existed during history. But now we have millions of them. And they're here, and they're humans too, and they want a good life. They want status like everyone else. So what would they do? What would you do, right? This is not about them being bad people, although many of them are, but it's just a natural result of there's only so much status to go around, and there's always going to be conflict.
Well, that's interesting. Would status be a finite resource? Because I never really thought of it like that. But there, like you had said, there's only so much status to go around. Is there any system that can grant equal status to everyone? Do you think that's even possible?
No, it doesn't work like that because we all want more stuff. And even if we all agree to all have the same amount of stuff, right? We do want better mates, right? And biologically, good genes are, I guess, normally distributed, right, in adult cures. We'll want the prettiest girl, right? So who gets the prettiest girl? Usually the guy with more status, and the other way around, right? Girls probably more so, right? Girls are more into status, are more into getting the top guy. So who gets it? There's only one top guy. There's only one prettiest girl in the class. There's always going to be fights for that.
Do you think, and I know this is a bit of a tangent right now, but I know one thing that you are very interested in these days is genetic engineering. And, I guess we can call it sort of scientific eugenics and stuff. Do you think that that there will be a future where they actually, and by they, I mean, that's a pretty broad they, but some groups or whatever try and standardize eugenics and gene editing in the interest of making everyone beautiful, or making, at least bringing everyone down to the same average of beauty?
Right. That is one of the things that gets me uh, gets me awake at night. I have a friend. I have a friend who is actually doing embryo selection for himself. He's tried to conceive, and he found a company who's willing to, get embryos and choose the highest IQ one and implant it. And talking about that, we all agree that it's at some point the cat is out of the bag. The technology already exists, even though we can't engineer them yet, but we're going to select them. What happens right now? Everybody's scared because it's kind of in a gray zone, probably legal. So people are doing it in Panama or in places like that, right? What happens when Western governments stop banning it and they try to play with it? And the first thing they do is mandate that all black babies have to be or 140 IQ, and white babies have to be the other way around. It's kind of like Brave
Yeah.
New World, but in a racialized way.
That, like, and for people who don't see that as a possibility, haven't really been paying attention. And someone had made a comment, I forget who actually did it, might have been Clossington actually, but they were pointing out how Hispanics and South Americans and Mexicans are more openly, we could use the word racist, but they're more in love with having a white baby. So there was just this amusing eventuality that as America gets browner and bans genetic engineering, you see South America purposefully keeping white people alive. And then over the course of 50 years, South America just becomes like white. That would be
Well,
very
yeah, I mean,
amusing to me.
if South Americans could do actual, designer babies, all the kids in South America would look Swedish, like every single one.